rise of Cthulhu from another dimension brings about 3,000 years of darkness, Tom.
How's it going, guys? I am your local hopeless historian, and today we'll be reacting to SCP-4007, Unit 731. I am actually pretty familiar with Unit 731. I'm working on a paper for a comics right now, and for SCP, I mean, it's SCP. I've watched Markiplier play through that game countless times, and I've read through the SCP Foundation quite a bit.
Towards their destination, the bioweapons lab operated by Unit 731.
It's not just bioweapons, my brother.
Japanese Surgeon General Shiro I.
So Unit 731 was not just a biological weapons testing facility. They also tested chemical, and they also tested elemental exposures. So what they would do is they would expose them to extreme heat, extreme cold, and other things similar to that to see how the human body would react. Additionally, they would also do things such as venereal disease testing, which would require people to forcibly get pregnant or have intercourse with one another to test the spread of venereal diseases and attempted cures to these diseases.
It is a mission of liberation.
I wonder what twists they're going to be putting on this.
If you know anything about Unit 731, just hearing the name will send a chill down your spine, just as it did for the Chinese soldiers hoping to perform a surprise assault on the unit's complex.
Yeah, I wonder what the SCP twist on this is going to be.
Chinese prisoners of war taken there, and the knowledge of the horrible things happening to their countrymen inside that building made their blood boil with white-hot fury. Their mission was simple. They would launch an attack on the complex when the unit least expected it, save as many prisoners as they could, while also taking revenge on as many unit soldiers as they could get their hands on. But what the brave soldiers didn't know is that they were in for a battle they couldn't hope to win.
Even without the SCP twists,
not in any traditional sense.
The Japanese military was relatively superior to the Chinese.
SCP-4007, an elite group of anomalous Japanese super soldiers known as the Ping Fang 5. A name spoken in fear by their enemies and victims for what little time both remained alive. The Chinese rebels were hiding in a stand of trees outside the fortress, waiting for the right moment to strike, when the Ping Fang 5 suddenly beat them to the punch and descended upon them. The plan was thrown into chaos when the trees burst into flames without so much as a hint of artillery being fired.
Defensive
The soldiers,
weapons?
all hardened men of war, began to grow scared. But then they saw something even more terrifying standing there amongst the flames. First Lieutenant Mitsuo Kitano, also known as Lightning Bolt, or SCP-4007-1 to the Foundation. One of his hands was wreathed in blue sparks of electricity, and the others he wielded a Type 14 Nambu pistol. Lieutenant Kitano continued his attack, using his anomalous lightning to blow away soldier after soldier.
Why is this something that I think would actually be rhetoric spread
Kitano dodged every bullet.
At the time, just to make the Chinese military just more and more terrified of the Japanese themselves.
Also known as the Ogre, or SCP-4007-2, charged into the fray. He effortlessly wielded a Type 11 machine gun and rained bullets down upon his unsuspecting foes. They shot back at him, but the bullets seemed to just bounce off his skin. He wasn't bothered by them in the slightest. He just smiled and continued.
Yeah, this seems like this could have actually been propaganda.
The whole thing
like, I know this is for the lulz, but...
As if on cue, one of their own soldiers turned and began firing on his fellow soldiers with his MP-18. This man
rumors and myth on battlefields must have been something crazy.
It was Corporal Joichiro Aida, also known as the Fox, or SCP-4007-3. How could he have possibly infiltrated the squadron? The answer is simple. He's an anomalously brilliant liar. In fact, it's impossible to not believe a single thing that Corporal Aida says, making him a true expert in espionage. Not a single one of the other rebels ever had a chance of sniffing him out before the doomed mission.
How did someone come up with this?
Then what came next must have seemed like something out of a nightmare. Lieutenant Wang Wei,
I mean, everything involving Unit 731 is a nightmare.
Began picking off his own troops with his pistol. The surviving soldiers didn't understand. Had the lieutenant gone mad? They tried to shoot him, but just like the others, he dodged effortlessly and continued to murder them. That's because he wasn't Lieutenant Wang Wei at all. Wei had been murdered in the forest earlier that night, and replaced by Private Teruo Nishimura, also known as SCP-4007-5, or the Shapeshifter. The Ping Fang 5 had infiltrated and compromised the mission from before it had even begun. They'd never even stood a chance. During the chaos of the massacre, a few of the rebels had managed to escape, running through a nearby clearing into a thicket of trees.
What the f-
If they could survive, then perhaps they could regroup and lead a second assault on another day. They had no hope of survival during a head-on conflict with these anomalous super soldiers. They needed to get away and form a new strategy.
How does someone
Gunshots
come up
started
with
ringing out through the forest,
an
tearing
SCP
into their
for
bodies and
Unit
dropping them
731?
one by one. They
I mean,
tried
I
to
appreciate it
return
because it
fire.
makes someone look
They
into
couldn't
what
even
Unit
see who was
731
shooting.
was, but
It seemed to
I
come
don't
from all
understand
directions. The rebels'
how
dying
someone
thoughts
puts
were that
these
the trees
together,
around them must have been crawling with
especially
death.
with like anomalous stuff
The reality was
interwoven
even
with
more frightening.
the people
It was
there,
only
and not like the
one
test subject or the testing or
Shigeru
facility
Matsuda,
itself.
codenamed Smoke, for this ability to become invisible at will. To the Foundation, he's known as SCP-4007-4, the last member of the Ping Fang 5, the deadliest troops in the entire Imperial Japanese Army. But unlike many of the biological anomalies cataloged by the SCP Foundation, the Ping Fang 5 were not born, they were made.
Huh?
In case you aren't familiar with the infamous Unit 731
What?
and their horrifying complex in Ping Fang, this unit was the secret department of the Japanese army ordered into existence by Emperor Hirohito himself for one sinister purpose: researching chemical and biological weapons for the Japanese Imperial Army.
Oh
Their
man,
leader,
this is
the
how they
Surgeon
did
General
it.
Shiroishi, was essentially given blanket
This is
permission
how they
to
did
do
it.
whatever he deemed necessary in order to achieve results for his emperor and his nation. Ishii took that directive and ran with it, unleashing pseudoscientific evil on a level matched only by the Nazi
Holy shit!
extermination
I'm
camps in
so
Europe.
happy this exists, but this
Experimental
is so
weapons and
terrible.
horrific diseases were tested on captured Chinese civilians, political dissidents, and prisoners of war. Thousands of people met horrific ends through execution, experimentation, and vivisection, which is the dissection of a subject that is still very much alive. How does this relate to the Ping Fang 5 and SCP-4007?
They tested
It
to
all
make
comes
them?
back to a top-secret project, overseen by Ishii himself, Project Shinka. While Unit 731 was established in 1935,
Yes.
in 1937 they began working in collaboration with the Imperial Japanese Anomalous Matters Examination Agency.
What the
Think of it
fuck?
as Imperial Japan's hyper-nationalist answer to the SCP Foundation. They had
This
become
is how they
aware of
blend the
existence of
SCP
anomalous
and
individuals
Unit
in
731 and
Imperial-controlled
Imperial
territories, and General
Japan?
Ishii wanted to know whether the powers manifested
Wow.
in these anomalous individuals could
This
be
is-
induced in others through forced
Wow.
organ removal and transplantation. To test this hypothesis, Ishii had the Japanese secret police
And I can
round
see
up
Japan
anomalous
doing these kinds of
individuals
things
in
during this
Imperial
period,
territory en
even if
masse.
it wasn't
They were
SCP
subjected to
Foundation
mass
thing that actually
vivisections
existed.
with the intention of isolating and removing anomalous organs. It was an act so positively genocidal in proportion that East Asia had statistically fewer anomalous humans than they should to this day. Ishii's intention was to transplant the organs into loyal volunteers from the Japanese military in order to create an unbeatable military force. Perfect soldiers who
But
would
what
win the
parts
war
created
for them.
those
The vast
particular
majority of these twisted experiments were
things?
complete failures, leading to the higher-ups at Unit 731 almost writing Project Shinka off as a waste of time and canceling the whole thing. But there were soon 5 notable exceptions, the very scary individuals you've already met. Not only did every member of the Ping Fang 5 end up with a specific anomalous superpower as a result of the experiments, they also experienced incredible anomalous prowess across
I
the
wish
board.
they tied in like
Members of the
certain
five boast
organs with
extended
certain things.
longevity, meaning they rarely show their age. Enhanced physical abilities, including faster reflexes, incredible senses, and immense physical strength. They also appear to have advanced mental development, displaying phenomenal tactical and strategic reasoning, as well as the ability to effortlessly learn, read, and speak multiple languages, like Japanese, English, Mandarin
Not gonna lie, I
Chinese,
wish I had
Russian,
that.
and German.
I would take
Of
that
course,
power.
Japan eventually lost the war, but the Ping Fang 5 had no intentions of ending their fight. They continued their missions long after Japan formally surrendered, causing chaos
Are they
and violence
tying the
across
people
East
into the
Asia. After several
ones that
unsuccessful
stayed hidden for the
engagements
extra
with
30
isolated
years or so?
members of the Ping Fang 5, leading to the deaths of many Foundation agents and civilians, the Foundation formed Mobile Task Force 551 aka MacArthur's Dogs, an elite group of operatives trained for the specific mission of bringing down the Ping Fang.
Of course,
Five.
Dragon
While the hunt
MacArthur in
rages
this.
on, 3 of the 5 are already dead. SCP-4007-1, Mitsuo Kitano, the man who can unleash bursts of electricity, met his end in Burma in 1948. During a procedure called Operation Smokehouse, 551 engaged Kitano in combat in the jungle. As was one of his trademark techniques, he attempted to use his electricity powers to burn down the jungle and escape during the chaos. However, the Foundation operatives surrounded and boxed him in. He couldn't escape, and when the fires were put out, he was found dead on the ground. The apparent cause of death was smoke inhalation. SCP-4007-2, Takashi Honda, the man with bulletproof skin, died in 1957.
They're also
in the
tying these
Philippines.
people
551
into
engaged him in
formerly
combat in a mission
controlled
dubbed
territories
Operation
of the
Homebreaker,
war, too.
which culminated in them calling down an airstrike on him. In the aftermath, Honda was found dead, but his cause of death was determined as having been from a powerful electric shock. And finally, SCP-4007-3, Joichiro Aida, the man with the silver tongue, was found dead a year later in 1958. His corpse was discovered in his room in Guiyang, southern China.
So they're just
to have been strangled.
Wow, I'm
And
so happy this
interestingly,
exists.
there was
This
evidence that he tried to engage
hopefully
in a shootout
turns
with his
some
killer,
people
but hadn't
into
succeeded in preventing
reading
his
into
own
what
murder.
Unit 731
All these
and what
circumstances
Japan
were
did
somewhat mysterious.
in Asia
The
during the
Foundation
war.
didn't investigate them much further after the bodies were tagged and bagged. SCP-4007-5, Teru Nishimura, the shapeshifter, is still on the run today, while SCP-4007-4 Shigeru Matsui, the Invisible Man, is doing just the opposite. He lives in Sarawak, Malaysia, and works in open cooperation with the SCP Foundation to help track down the 5th member of the Ping
And now Operation
Not
Paperclip
much
type
has
things.
changed in the 64 years since the death of Joichiro Aida. It seemed like the search for SCP-4007-4 had gone cold, until a Foundation archival clerk found something suspicious. The original paper copy of the SCP-4007 document, which was dated a year before the Foundation had supposedly discovered the existence of SCP-4007. As the archival worker dug further, they found a number of unsettling discoveries that alter the true meaning of SCP-4007. In the original paper documents, each dead member of the Ping Fang 5 had organs missing, and each subsequent member's death involved a power possessed by a former member. 2 was electrocuted, and 3's gun was useless, as the killer had been wearing 2's bulletproof skin. Who was behind this? Why? And most importantly of all,
So he's a
how
member.
had this all been forgotten? Through more digging, the Foundation discovered the truth about SCP-4007-4. His powers weren't invisibility. They were anti-mimetic. He can make people forget him at will, essentially editing their memories so he could do whatever he wanted without detection. Like, for example, murdering his team members and stealing their powers. They even managed to find an archived letter from 4 to 3, begging for his help in fighting some kind of unknown monster, something that would require their combined powers to face, whether they ended up being as 5 separate men or 1 man with all of their powers. This whole time, SCP-4007-4 had been playing the Foundation like a fiddle, using their resources
So is it
to
all
help them
one
track
guy?
down the final member of the Ping Fang 5, to recruit him into one final mission, or murder him and steal his powers. But that still leaves one question. What is this mission? What is this monster? The Foundation managed to find out, at least partially. They charted the death locations of each of the 3 dead Ping Fang members, and the living location of SCP-4007-4, and discovered something amazing. 4 of the 5 points on a perfect pentagon, centering on the South China Sea. The Foundation also estimated that the pentagon would reveal the location of SCP-4007-5 at the final point, but his location isn't nearly as interesting as what resides at the center of this massive geographical pentagon. Foundation divers discovered huge numbers of sunken Japanese battleships, downed planes, and thousands of bones littering the seabed.
Okay, I thought that would have been a reference to the dumping of military supplies
shot or blown up. No, they had been
after World
torn
War
apart
II.
by something obscenely huge and powerful underneath the water. The Pentagon, a significant shape in sorcery, is likely a massive
pentagram.
supernatural containment ritual. keeping whatever unspeakable horror is lurking under the ground there from escaping.
Godzilla?
A containment ritual that could only be maintained by 5 special individuals in 5 special places. It was in this moment that the Foundation came upon a truly horrifying revelation. They had misjudged the intentions of Project Shinka. It was never about creating assets for the war against the Allies.
It's some with
about a war
Cthulhu.
against something else entirely. Something much more dangerous than, and deadly than, the squabbles between men. It was about the entity that lurked below. A creature that nobody understood, and that no conventional weapon can fight. And if the ritual is ever broken, and the beast is allowed to rise, the Ping Fang 5 will be the very least of our problems.
They appeared to have unleashed the dark and mighty Cthulhu. The rise of Cthulhu from another dimension brings about 3,000 years of darkness, Tom, where we will all be driven to madness and made to serve as Cthulhu's cultist slaves.
That's it. Like, comment, subscribe. Video done.